Welcome to today's CrossPoint devotion. I appreciate you coming to join us. We have been, in addition to these devotions, producing some shorts. And in one of the recent shorts, I talked about the story of Abraham offering his son Isaac on the altar, and how at the last minute when God saw Abraham's faith, he made a provision and there was a ram in the bush. And I made the point with that little short that God always provides. Well, we had someone who responded to that short. They watched it, they enjoyed it, but they had a question. Why does God not always provide at the moment we expect Him to provide? Why is He always sometimes a little bit later in the schedule than we would want? And so I decided it might be good for us to answer that question. Why is God sometimes a little slow in making His provision? And I've decided that maybe there are 3 reasons that God can delay. One is God knows we're not ready for the provision, so He delays and then He gives it when we are ready. So it could be that you're waiting right now for God's provision, and He knows if He gave it to you, you would misuse it or you would abuse it. And so He's not ready to give it to you because you're not ready to receive it. A second reason God may not make the provision is that He wants to see your faith, or He wants to see my faith before He gives us what we've asked for or what we need. For example, in the story of Abraham, he's at the location, he's got Isaac tied up, he's created this altar, and then when God sees him lift the knife, God knows Abraham is living by faith. He's trusting that God will bring about just what He said, even if it means the resurrection of his son from the dead. In fact, the book of Hebrews talks about that Abraham was willing to sacrifice Isaac because he believed by faith that God would be able to raise that young man up from the dead if he took his life. So once God saw Abraham's faith, then He made the provision of the ram in the bush because He saw the faith of Abraham. Maybe God hasn't made the provision for you because He hasn't seen your faith. And once He sees it, He'll make the provision. But the last reason, the third reason, is that God may be delaying in giving you what He's going to give you because He's got a bigger plan at work. You can't see it, and sometimes I can't see it. God's always at work around us. In fact, that's what the New Testament calls spiritual warfare. There are things going on in the spiritual realm that we can't always see, and God's working things out because He's got a bigger plan than you and I even understand. And so it could be that God has not made His provision because He's still working out some things that need to fall into place for His bigger overarching plan of making Himself known and getting the gospel to the nations. And so don't ever forget that. So those are the 3 reasons. Maybe you're not ready to receive it. Maybe God's waiting to see your faith. Or maybe God has bigger plans than you and I even understand. But I want to assure you, based on what I've read in the Bible, especially from the Old Testament to the New about Jesus and Him being the provision that God had planned for us from before time began, that led to Him being born as a person there in Bethlehem, who then grew up and went and died on the cross and was buried and resurrected on the 3rd day. I can just tell you from the Bible's witness, God always provides. And I think that's why Abraham said in Genesis 22, Verse 14, after this experience with God, he named the very place where he was going to offer Isaac, and God made a provision. He named that place, the Lord will provide. Let me read that for you. It's from Genesis 22, verse 14. And Abraham named that place, the Lord will provide. So today it says, it will be provided on the Lord's mountain. I hope that'll encourage you. Don't give up. Just trust God. Live by faith. And know that He may have something bigger going on, but He will provide. That's His promise. We've already seen it once in Jesus. You can trust Him always. He will provide.